Have you ever woken up and wondered, is this really my life? Have you ever felt the weight of exhaustion before the day even begins? Have you looked around and realised that somewhere along the way you lost yourself? That was me on the second day of 2024. I woke up around 5 a.m. wanting the blackness of the night to just swallow me up. I stared into the dark, looking up to where I knew the ceiling would be. I felt tears in my eyes. The weight of burnout from my job sat heavy on my chest, and the memory of taking painkillers the night before to subside another migraine induced by yet another vertigo episode was like my body telling me I couldn't keep doing life this way. Something had to change. I didn't recognise myself anymore. I didn't know who I wanted to be and felt dragged along by the hamster wheel of a corporate job, chasing validation and recognition, and balancing motherhood and all of life's responsibilities. And I wasn't doing any of it well. I drifted so far from the person I used to be, someone who liked to create, who noticed beauty in the world, who laughed with her children without checking her phone every 15 minutes. That morning, in a quiet whisper, I made my resolution. I quit. Hey friends, I am Tossin. If you're new here, welcome. This channel is a space where I share my journey of leaving a corporate job to live more simply, more intentionally, and more in line with who I believe God created me to be, a mother, a homemaker, and a creative. If you've been questioning what success really looks like and feeling the tension between the life you're living and the one you long for, I hope these lessons speak to you. Lesson 1. Nothing is wasted, even the detours. Every step of your story matters, even the ones that don't make sense yet. In my corporate life, I often felt like I was chasing someone else's version of success. I had respect, yes, but I was also replaceable. After 4 years in my last role of working hard, working towards promotion, it all ended with a very unceremonious digital goodbye. And being someone who'd definitely been a part of pools of getting gifts and flowers and organising goodbyes for other colleagues, there was like not one flower or chocolate, barely a farewell. It was pretty quiet. What I've come to believe is that God wastes nothing. The season taught me discipline. It taught me how to juggle. I am still using the skills from corporate today in the business I eventually started, and it has given me the resilience and the skill of patience that is needed in my day-to-day life. And now in homemaking and in building the business, I'm using those skills to show up, but just in a different way. God is always weaving, even in the painful, confusing threads. Live aligned with your values. I was constantly living in tension. I was working this corporate job and having to hustle in a way that was not natural to my introverted nature, having to change who I am, my personality, and having to code switch in the corporate work environment. I just did not feel like myself. And what I recognised after having a career coach in the year previously was that I have values that didn't align with the way that I was working on a daily basis. My core values were family, faith, and creativity, as well as so much more. But those 3 things were barely being prioritised in my life at the time. When I left my job, I didn't just leave that role and the status of it. I actually stepped into alignment, which was great for somebody who was so frazzled and burnt out. And it was great to start taking care of myself, even if it was little by little. I started sleeping more and cooking meals from scratch. I started spending more time in the Word and even like doing courses to rediscover my creativity. The most important thing for me was being more present for my children, and that was something that I just know money just can't buy. And I gained a lot of clarity I knew what mattered to me, and I finally was making steps towards living it out. Integrity is when life reflects your values, and to be able to do that in a real way and not just in words. The little years matter, and I want to be fully present for them. These early years with my children, these little years, they're a gift, and I don't want to miss it. And I know if I kept living the way I was, I would have. I used to feel like I was just going, like life was just happening to me, like I was this passive observer and racing through the motions of motherhood, deadlines, work emails, responsibilities. I was constantly pouring myself out, giving myself to my job, and in the end it returns crumbs. Money, yes, but no real recognition, like not of lasting value. And I realised something, that when I poured into my family, I just would never regret it. This year I made a decision that was both quiet and radical at the same time. I left my job to become a homemaker, to step off the corporate treadmill and say yes to being present and having more purpose and a slower pace of home. It wasn't easy, and it's not a glamorous decision, but I started to live in the moments of my life instead of letting them rush past me. I breathed them in. I noticed how my children were growing and changing, and I got to really know them, not just feed them and ferry them around, but be with them. There's this quote, I think it's attributed to Gretchen Rubin. The days are long, but the years are short. And it's true. Some days in motherhood and just home life, it feels endless, like messy, noisy, and just that monotonous repetition. It can get mundane. But I am deeply aware that these days are forming the foundation of who my children will become. I don't want to look back and realise I wasn't truly there. When I have been kind of thinking about this decision, still while I was working, I spoke to an old woman in my church who she had shared with me her own decision to stay home until her youngest finished secondary school. She said, "You'll never regret the time you spent with your children growing up." And I've held those words. If I had done the opposite and stayed in my job, kept chasing the next role, the next raise, I know I would regret it. Maybe it would have looked good on paper, but for me personally, it would have cost me too much. To be home in these little years has given me back my life, and it has given my children the best of me, and I have no regrets about that, only gratitude. Creativity and rhythms give me myself back. When I left the structure of corporate life, I had to relearn how to live. I talk about that year, the year I left my corporate job, as this year of unravelling, and I had to relearn what life looked like outside of the 9 to 5 and put rhythms in place that helped. At first, the wide open days felt quite overwhelming, but then I started to build gentle rhythms, not too rigid, but these anchors, like morning pages, quiet time, reading my Bible in the mornings, doing exercise, joined the local gym as well, got into Pilates a bit more, and tried to create time for weekly planning before the week started. And in that space, creativity bloomed. I started journaling again, started writing a newsletter, singing, taking photos. I picked up the camera again, and just being open to learning more. I sought out community and people who were on a similar journey of doing the same thing, whether it's creative discovery or whether it was trying to start businesses from home or really focusing in on home life as a homemaker and mother. Learning from others, finding others doing the same thing really helped solidify my sense of self and the path that I was on. There's a book called The Pathless Path, which I read in the time of that year, and it talks about finding the others, and I definitely found that approach as well really helpful. Being able to be quiet and give myself that breadth and space in the midst of creating new routines helped me hear my own voice again, which was great to be able to move forward. If I've learned anything this past year, it's this: God is not calling us to strive, He's calling us to abide. And in this season for me, that looks like staying home, raising my children, creating again, creating with joy, and choosing slowness, purpose and presence. I'm still learning, I'm still growing, but I finally feel like I'm living on purpose. If that speaks to you, I'd love for you to join me here. I'll be sharing more about how I'm building a creative life from home with intention. Drop a comment below. I'd love to hear what this season is teaching you. And if you haven't already, subscribe. Until next time.